Hi, we're at Homestead-Miami Speedway for the NASCAR Championship, the final race. It's going to be so exciting. So let's go see who we can talk to. So you just announced you'll be here at Homestead next year for the Xfinity race. What is it about this track that made you want to pick it?
I really love racing here because this track, you can run on the bottom of the racetrack and you can run up against the wall. Some of the tracks, there's only one groove in the corner, and if you get out of that groove, you're really slow. So those are real frustrating tracks because if your car's not fast, then you can't get creative behind the wheel. You have to run that line, and that's it. There's also running against the fence here. You see Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and all those guys run right on the wall. That is so much fun. It's really a lot of fun to do, and it's not the fast way around a lot of racetracks, but it can be here. So I'm looking forward to it. I wanted to run this race in the last several years, but I didn't because it was the final championship race, and that would be bad for me to be out there in the middle of that in their way, right, while these guys are trying to win a championship. And so we would pick a different racetrack to go to, and now they're moving it to March, and it's not the final race next year, so I get to run it.
With Penske owning IndyCar now, an IndyCar and NASCAR doubleheader weekend could become a reality. What are your thoughts on how this weekend could realistically work for both series and for the fans in the stands?
It's like going to a concert where there's 10 or 12 bands playing as opposed to just one headliner. You're getting to see a lot more value for the money you're going to spend to go, and it's very expensive for the fans to get in there and camp and enjoy a race weekend the way they want to, so it just brings more value. So I think it's great. The series will talk, they'll work it out and make it happen. There's been enough talk about it that I think it will become a reality. It's going to happen at some point.
In your opinion, what would be a good race track for that kind of event?
That's a really good question. Where would there be a good race for both series? And I think Indianapolis is probably not on the table as an opportunity as far as the oval, but the Indy 500 is just such a special event. You'd never want to do anything to change the tradition of that race, but they do have a road course, and they do run a road course race with the Indy cars there, but I know that the Indianapolis road course is something that NASCAR's, there's been some talk, because the oval at Indy's not been amazing for us. It's been hot and cold, and fans have been asking, hey, how would the road course look for stock cars at Indy? And I think it'd be a great way to do the doubleheader. I think that the stock cars would be really entertaining on the road course at Indy. So if you could do a doubleheader at some other point in the year with the Indy cars and the stock cars, the other thing that's great about that idea is, think about this, there would be real potential for drivers, at least from the IndyCar series, to race in the stock car race on a road course, right? Now, you wouldn't think that those guys could go to an oval and do any kind of cross promotion or drive in both series. It'd be really, really challenging for both the stock car guys and the IndyCar guys to get in the other cars and drive them at an oval. But at a road course, it's a little more realistic to think that. Kyle Busch or Kurt Busch or some of those guys who've raced in IndyCar, or some of the guys who've been behind the wheel of these Indy cars, could probably adapt really quickly on the road course and be reasonably competitive, I think, in racing on the road course. And vice versa. The IndyCar guys could go into a stock car at Indianapolis on the road course and be competitive and have fun and enjoy being a part of that race. So not only do you got both series there together, but you also have the stars from both series and racing in each other's race. I mean, it just really is a neat idea. I think that the more you did it year after year after year, you'd have more drivers being able to pre-plan and set up sponsorships and opportunities to race both series in the same weekend.
How do you feel about the Indy 500 moving its starting time to allow more NASCAR drivers to do the Indy Charlotte double? Think we'll see more Cup drivers attempt it?
It certainly opens up that opportunity, and there's probably only one or two Cup guys that would really want to do it, right? And so those one or two guys have to be able to race in a similar manufactured car, and probably I think that they're, if they're racing for Chevrolet or Toyota in NASCAR, that it's going to be difficult to race a different manufacturer in Indy. So that's got to line up. And then, obviously they got to get themselves affiliated with the team and an owner that wants to do it, that's willing to do it. They got to be able to, it's a whole month where you go qualify, practice, and all that at Indianapolis. There's a lot of responsibilities for the drivers outside of the cars with the parade and autograph sessions and all those things. And so it's a big, big task to race in that race. Everybody just thinks, I watched the race and that's what happens, but there is a month of work and pomp and celebration that leads up to it. So it's a big responsibility to say I'm going to run the Indy 500 and continue racing my Cup schedule, right? Because you've got the Cup races happening during that month while those guys are practicing and qualifying. So you've got to go back and forth in and out of the car. It's really tough.
That's like a cramped schedule.
Super cramped, yeah.
What's the best race car you ever had? What car, at what race, was it just perfect?
Well, probably there's a few, when you think about that, you think about, the races. I'm going to think about the races I've won. I mean, there's been times I've had cars that were amazing and we didn't win the race, but it's easy to think about the races you won and imagine the best cars that you had. It was an Xfinity race in July in Daytona, I think in 2001. We had this funky car with flames on it and led every single lap of the race. It was a 100-lap race, and we led every lap, and the car was perfect. It just was easy and wasn't going to get past. Nobody could compete with that car. The car I won my first Cup race with at Texas was very good. Toward the end of the race there, we got really, really fast, and the car just drove so well. Maybe you have cars such as at the All-Star race when I was a rookie and we won that weren't great at the start of the race, but at the end of the race they were amazing. And just so dominant. It's rare, if ever, do you have a car that you're happy with from start to finish of the race, much less the weekend. So that's the one thing I always try to tell people is that, even the guy leading the race is unhappy about something with his car. Right? There's never, even the guy leading the race is going, this thing could do this better, and he's telling his crew chief, how to make the car faster.
If you ran NASCAR for one day and you could make one permanent change, what would it be and why?
It's great to get asked that question, and the answer changes all the time. It does. So the sport's always changing, and if you asked me that question 6 months ago, I would have said something completely different. And 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it'd have been all different answers. But what I would tell you today is that I would take all the downforce off the cars. And I think that, the race that we saw at Phoenix last week and the race we saw tonight for the championship, I just feel like that the drivers, if you look at the end of this race today with at Homestead, there was only 2 little scrapes on the fence. So there was no cars really getting out of shape, no drivers making mistakes, nobody getting into the wall. The night before in the Xfinity race, it literally looked like somebody had went and painted the walls black because so many people had been in the fence and rubbing the wall and slipping up and making a mistake, So with all the downforce piled onto the cars that we have now, the drivers aren't making those mistakes. They aren't slipping up. They aren't over driving the car and putting themselves in bad situations that tend to be exciting to watch. So just taking this small sample size of what we've seen at the short tracks this year, plus what we saw tonight in this final race of the season, I would really love. This isn't a bash toward the current package. This isn't a conversation about NASCAR and the direction the sport's going. I'm just saying my curiosity is maxed out as to what the cars would do without any downforce at all. Like completely rip away every bit of it and see what would happen. I'm just so curious.
Maybe since the sport is always updating, we might see that happen, and we all will give credit to you.
Well, I wouldn't give credit to me. I think that the NASCAR sees that as well, and there's been conversation, and with my ear to the ground, I can hear that there is concern on their end as well. As we go to home, if we're going to go to Phoenix at the end of the year next year to crown the champion, and we just cannot have a repeat of what we had last week as far as the way that race played out, and there was little to no cautions and real drama, and hard to pass, really hard to pass. The shorter the racetrack, the harder it is for these guys to pass with the big spoiler.
As a former professional driver, how often do you get road rage in real highway traffic? Does it ever get frustrating out there, or do you have, amazing patience?
I would like to think that I have amazing patience, more so than my wife. And I say that because that's who I ride around the car with the most. But I got all of that impatient hustle sort of, anger and frustration out on the racetrack. I really did. I had plenty. That was a great avenue and vehicle for me to get that out. And when I would get on the road at home, I drove very casually and still do today. I'm not ever in a hurry. I don't ever have to tell myself to slow down or be careful or worry about speeding tickets, because it's rare that I'm ever pushing the envelope there or taking big risks on the highway, so to speak. But I don't really ever have to be anywhere too pressing anyways. And I typically, I feel like do a pretty good job of showing up on time to everything that has any kind of a responsibility, such as getting your hair cut or going to the dentist, being at work and all those things. I just haven't never really, I'm not a person that runs late or leaves the house late. I'm always if we're going on vacation, I'm packed a day ahead of time and got everything in the car, and I'm ready to basically turn the key and drive out the driveway. It's never a hustle for me last minute. I'm completely the opposite of that.
Well, then I'm completely opposite of you.
Oh, yeah?
I always do everything late. I try to be earlier on schedule. Sometimes works, but mostly never.
For sure. I probably was the same way when I was your age, and you'll learn that you change as a person over the time. You adapt new qualities and appreciation for different things. And I used to sleep in till 10, 11, 12 o'clock every day. My dad used to drive my dad crazy, and now I'm up at 7 o'clock every morning, and I don't even mean to. I'm just I'm awake, and that's it. And it's like I got an internal clock that wakes me up at 7 o'clock no matter what. I used to want to stay up late and play video games or whatever, and I can hardly keep my eyes open at 9 o'clock at night. So you change whether you want to or not. You don't even really mean to, and sometimes things in your life change.
Has anybody ever recognized you, in a run-in or after a fender bender?
It's been a while since I've had any kind of issue on the road, but, typically it used to be quick. People would, when I was a race car driver and I was part of the circus, I would get noticed relatively quickly. And now I've noticed the further I'm removed from driving a car, people do double takes more now, and sometimes they're like, you remind me of somebody, and it takes them a while, and I'm sure that would be so embarrassing if I was to get myself into an accident on the highway. I have, but I've had some. So I was if I was getting in an accident with somebody and then have to stand on the side of the road and small talk waiting on the cop or the wrecker to get there while And especially if it was my fault. You know, I'm a professional race car driver. I'm not supposed to have accidents. Like, that should be the easiest thing in the world, right? Driving on the road, on the highway. But one time it snowed. This was like 2 years ago, and I had a Jeep and was driving down the road, and this guy was stuck in the tree. He had bounced into a tree, but his car was okay. But he wasn't going to get it out of the ditch. I, along with a couple other people, helped him get his car out of the ditch, and I just left that scene, and I'm thinking, man, that was cool to help somebody. And a mile down the road, I slid right off the road into a tree, and I backed my Jeep up and went on about my business, and nobody knew anything about it, right? But I tweeted, I said, dang, I was helping somebody get out of a ditch, and then a mile later I slid off the road. Be careful, the roads are bad. And what everybody took from that was Dale Jr. wrecked on the highway. Not that the roads were bad or to be safe or stay off the roads. It was, oh man, the professional race car driver wrecked on the road. So I will no longer, if I am ever in an accident by myself, be telling anybody about it. I'll keep that to myself next time.
I recently heard about this awesome car museum graveyard you created on your property. Is that something anyone can go tour, or is it just your friends?
It's on my property, and it's not something that's open to the public. It may be one day down the road. I don't even know why anybody would want to see it. I think once you would go through it, you'd be like, yeah, this is neat. You know, there's old wrecked cars. It's in the woods, and the vines kind of grow over them and take, you know, it just sort of looks kind of eerie in a way. But some of the cars do have stories. You know, they have, you know, some of them were in certain recognizable crashes or memorable crashes. Some of them not even are wrecked. You know, some of them are just obsolete or cars that became old and were replaced by new cars. And so, but yeah, like, I think it sounds cool, and I think people will go, oh, that'd be neat to see, but then they'd go through there and go, why did you put these cars out here? Why are they just laying in the woods? Like, what's the point? I'll tell you why I started doing that. As an owner of our Xfinity team at Junior Motorsports, when we would wreck a car real bad, the usual thing that you do is just take it and send it to scrap, you know, to send it to the scrap yard. And I would look at the car and go, wait, we spent months building it, and everybody put so much work into it, and we can't throw it away, but there's nothing to do. It can't race. It's ruined. So what do? You know, and I would start stockpile them on my property. And I just had this place where I was kind of laying them in this yard, in this field. And finally I thought, man, I got to get these cars out of this field, and I don't want to see them, but I kind of don't want to throw them away. So I started sticking them in the woods, and we'd shove them into the weeds and into the bushes on the side of these trails and let nature sort of take over. And that's where they are. I don't know where it's going or how long we'll continue to do that. I've never bought a car to put in there. I don't know. People think that I see a car that gets crashed and I call up a team and go, can I buy that, or can I give you a couple $100 for it? I've never done that. And I wish there are cars that crash, and I know they're ruined, and I wish I could have, but the teams don't want to give them to me because they think that I'm going to allow other teams to come look at them and find secrets, right? So as teams got more secretive, it became less likely that I was going to get a crashed car. And but some teams still do call me when they wreck a car. Stuart Haas has been giving me cars pretty regularly. I got a car from them this year. But they'll call me and just say, hey, we got this car that's ruined. Do you want it? Do you still put them in your graveyard? And we tend to go get them immediately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I kind of want to go.
I know. I think it sounds
cool.
It is. I think it sounds cool, and maybe it is cool. Since it's mine and since I started and created it, maybe it's not as cool to me or as unique because I just have had it for so long. And I'm super duper... I really have a hard time with having the reaction of why would anybody care, right? And that's not the reaction you should have. Like, you wouldn't do this interview if you didn't think anybody wanted to hear it, right? So you're doing it because you're confident and you know people want to listen to it, and you know it's going to do well, and you've got this goal for yourself. And but when I put it together, it wasn't for people to come see it. It was just because I didn't want to throw the cars away. And now people want to come see it, and I'm like, why would you want to come see it? It's really just cars laying in the woods, and I'm around it all the time. It's not that unique. But I do feel like I do totally get, like, when people hear about it, they go, oh, man, I want to see it. How can I see it, you know? And one day I think I will open it up to the public and then stand there at the end of the tour and go, what'd you think? Did you like it, or was it weird, or did you waste your time come out here? I'll be interested to hear people's reaction.
Well, that's it for the NASCAR Championship. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Dale Jr. And I mean, what's more rock star than Dale himself? I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you smash the subscribe button, like, and share. Bye!